Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhan dhamma sangham namassami. And this is a very traditional way to start a Dhamma talk, and which means, which is just like being grateful to the Buddha for giving us Dharma, and to bow to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which is the enlightened one, the teaching of the enlightened, and those who practice it with their whole life. And I just want to mention first that I was invited to offer a lecture or Dhamma talk on this yoga teacher course by Monica. And she asked me to do a lecture on karma and Sankharas. So, and this is actually part of the Dhamma, to be flowing with the experience, being like receptive to what life brings. So, as long as it's wholesome and good, I just go with the flow. So I believe that there is some deep reason for that Monica asked me specifically for this subject. That's why I adapt and I will offer exactly that. And in general, I must say it's not exactly beginner subject, because subject of Sankharas is, I would say, a little bit advanced. So this will be a little bit more advanced Dhamma talk, but I will try to present it as clear and simple way as possible. But before I get to the main subject, I want to give a little bit of linguistic and historical background, so it will be much easier to understand. And it will create a bridge between yoga and Buddhism, because I'm much more founded in Buddhism, in early Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism. But actually, yoga and Buddhism are very strongly interconnected. And so I want to say a few things. But before we go, first of all, some linguistic remarks. Because even in the title of this lecture, it's called Karma and Samskaras. And actually, this is both Sanskrit words. But in general, these teachings were codified in various languages. But most two important for us is Sanskrit and Pali. Because Sanskrit is the language of yoga, of Tibetan Buddhism, of Zen Buddhism. They use Sanskrit words. But early Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism use Pali words. But in general, these are like two sacred languages that are almost the same. And some words, like karma or nirvana, are brought to our Western culture, and they are so well known that they are like basic language, that even when you type in English, then autocorrect will correct you to karma or nirvana. They know these words, right? And but in general, I am much more rooted in Pali tradition. So outside of these basic words that are universal, I will use Pali equivalents. And to give you an example, for example, word nirvana in Sanskrit, in Pali is nibbana. But it's the same thing. Nirvana, nibbana, it's just two different languages by two different traditions, but it's exactly the same thing. For example, karma in Sanskrit is kamma in Pali. And samskaras in Sanskrit is sankharas in Pali. So they are so similar that I guess you won't have much trouble. So if you hear a word that you know in Sanskrit, but it's a little bit different, then just assume it's the same word, but in Pali. Because I have such strong habits to speak in Pali that I might make, that I might just use them by habit. But in general, I try to keep karma as karma because it's so common in our language that, let's say, it's almost English word, karma. So that's like linguistic background. And to historical background, to build a little bit bridge between Buddhism and yoga, and to show you how much it's interconnected, because many people don't realize that. And there are some confusions about it. I will keep that very short. But long story short, yoga is in general a very practical system that has been around for 1,000 years before Christian era, and it was mostly like a shamanic practice of various spiritual exercises that were just not really codified. These were just practical ways of spiritual path. Yoga, like, you know, all these asanas and stuff like that. And they were around for thousands of years. And in general, later on there was all this Vedic period where there was Vedas before Upanishads, which were like some texts of Hinduism that was later called Hinduism, but it was actually Brahmanism, Vedas. And they were actually, if you read Vedas, I don't want to be, you know, I will be very soft about this, but in general, if you read Vedas, they are not very spiritually advanced texts. There is like animal sacrifice there. There is a lot of just worshipping of gods, not much talk about morality and stuff like that. And in 8th century before Christian era, they evolved into Upanishads. And Upanishads is the fourth Vedic book, which was much more advanced, much more spiritual, much more pure, where, for example, the sacrifice was turned into sacrifice of your defilements, where actually there was talk about spiritual development of all these wholesome states, pondering on nature of consciousness, realizing liberation and stuff like that. So all this stuff were codified mostly in Upanishads, which is much more spiritual and philosophical aspects of Vedas. And so it's important to note. And also, during this time were emerging so-called Sankhya and Yoga Sankhya. Sankhya is actually philosophy of yoga, which is one of the branch of Brahmanism or Hinduism, which is much more spiritual, practical, pure, and stuff like that. And it's important to know that actual yoga philosophy is based in Sankhya. And what is even more important is that there was a person named Siddhartha Gautama, who was the Buddha to be, and he actually, when he went on, left his lay life, became an samana, which is actually the same root word as shaman, which are these casteless wanderers in India, which seek liberation from suffering. He actually had two very important teachers, and there were Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputra, and both these teachers were Sankhya philosophers and yogic practitioners. So actually, two first teachers of the Buddha were yogis. And the Buddha learned from them, and he mastered their art to the way that one of them told Buddha that let's together lead this school, and the other one said, let you be the leader. So he actually wanted the Buddha to lead his own school of yoga. But the Buddha said, I think this stuff, he in general said something like that, yeah, you know, this practice leads to hundreds of eons of super bliss and in next life and stuff like that, because these yogic practices at this time, from the Buddhist perspective, were leading to highest incarnations in future lives in super heavenly realms. But he said it doesn't lead to ultimate liberation. So he went on. He then tried some ascetic practices, very hardcore with Jain ascetics. But after 5-6 years, he said, no one ever has done so much austerity as I did, but it didn't bring me liberation. So he started so-called middle way, Majjhima Patipada, the path between two extremes of indulgence or in hedonism and between extreme asceticism. So this is the path of spiritual pleasure. And he then started to practice so-called jhanas. And jhanas is this natural state of meditation. Actually very similar, it's actually the same that he learned from his yogic teachers, but he did one thing different. He differently interpreted these experiences, because from Buddhist perspective, before these teachers just thought that these jhanic states are the ultimate states, but the Buddha went beyond that. That he found that even these ultimate heavenly realms are impermanent, it's not nirvana, so he just when he penetrated their impermanent nature, then he arrived at ultimate enlightenment. And then he started teaching. He formed a Sangha, which is the Sangha of Bhikkhu and Bhikkhunis, which actually Bhikkhu means mendicant, which is the one who lives on alms. So these wandering monks who live on alms and just practicing Dharma. And this is the Buddhist Sangha. Of course, later on, the Sangha divided in many branches and stuff like that. And of course, in the other way, the Buddha influenced not just the Buddhists, but the yogic people also were incorporating Buddhist teachings, and even Hinduism, Brahmanism incorporated Buddhist teachings. And actually, what might be shocking for most of you, that Patanjali Yoga Sutras were written 800 years after the Buddha. And actually, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are very strongly based on Buddhist scriptures. Even, for example, you have the eightfold path of yoga, right? Yamas, niyamas, asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. 8 paths. In Buddhism, we have eightfold path. Some right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right action, right effort, right mindfulness, and right samadhi. So the eight factor is exactly the same. And if you compare these two, even if they are a little different, actually their essence is exactly the same. Morality, wisdom, and meditative concentration, meditative stillness. So in general, if you really track these texts, then the main yogic scripture, very ancient one, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, are based on Buddhist scriptures. So, to conclude, the Buddha actually learned a lot from yogic teachers, and then actual yoga texts were based on Buddhist texts. So you can see a very strong connection. And it's important to note that yoga as a practice was before the Buddha, but the yoga as a very coherent system was after the Buddha, inspired by the Buddha. And actually, from some perspective, you might say the Buddha was the greatest yogi. And because actually, if you would call what is Buddhism in yoga terms, it's Raja Yoga, which Raja Yoga is like this royal yoga in translation, which is the yoga of the heart. Because the Buddha taught the yoga as the path of meditation. And exactly this is Patanjali's Raja Yoga, which is yoga as a meditative path, in which asana and pranayama is a basis for deep meditation. And after that, Hatha Yoga and all this stuff, actually at the root, Hatha Yoga was very similar to Raja Yoga. But then they developed different paths, but it doesn't really matter. What is important is that actually you can treat Buddhism as Raja Yoga. And this is like the core yoga. Later on there were many different variations, but this is like the core, the essence. And so that's why there is a lot of connection. And if you would be, let's say, a yoga practitioner and following yoga philosophy, then you can actually base your philosophy in Buddhism as well, and it will work great. Because you just expand, let's say, this Buddhist practice with yoga as a physical practice, it's both physical and psychological at the same time, and spiritual. Because yoga is about connecting physical practice with mental practice, with spiritual practice, right? So this is all connected. So in this way, we can really just focus right now on this. Because I will present you this karma and sankharas from the Buddhist perspective, but it is pretty much the same. And one more thing that is important is that the Buddha has discovered the Dhamma. He didn't invent the Dharma, because the Dharma is timeless. The Dharma is always there, timeless, inviting to check it out, let's say, and to be practiced, and it leads onward to liberation. And even the Buddha had such a situation that when he got enlightened, he said, yeah, you know, the customs of the noble ones are such that they bow to the ones who are deeper on the path than them. But actually the Buddha was the highest in the universe, so he couldn't bow to anyone because he was the highest at this point. And he said, but I want to bow to something, so I will bow to the Dharma. Because the Dharma is timeless, and he just discovered it and he just explained it. So it's very important, because if you realize that the Dharma is timeless, that actually all religions or spiritual practices reveal the Dhamma to some degree. Of course, they reveal it in different ways, in different methods, and in different levels of depth, let's say. But in general, this is same truth, because Dharma is the truth. And now, we cannot speak about the karma and sankharas if we don't understand what Dharma is. So I will start from what is Dharma. And Dharma has 5 or 6 meanings, and they are all connected. And if you understand them all, then you will understand the Dharma as a whole. So the first meaning of Dharma is it's just living according to the truth, like living according to the universal law of nature. The second is the teaching of the Buddha, or the teaching of the enlightened ones. The third one is just the truth. The fourth is the nature of reality, or laws of nature. And fifth is nature of phenomena. So you can see that in general, Dharma is like, and why it's the same thing? Because it's living according to the laws of nature, which is explained by the Buddhas, or the enlightened ones, which is the truth, which is the nature of reality or laws of nature, and which is the nature of things. So they are all connected. And as you can see, in general, but let us extract the really core issue of the Dharma. So I like to think of the Dharma as Dharmacharya, which is very similar word to Brahmacharya. Holy life is Brahmacharya, and Dharmacharya is life according to Dharma. And actually it's even in the word Dharma, because Dharma is good conduct. It's the conduct according to the laws of nature. So actually Dharma is a path according with the laws of nature. And why it's important? Because in Dharma, spiritual laws of nature are the same operating like physical laws. And even the Buddha said that there are 5 laws. First is the law of matter. Second is law of biology. Third is laws of psychology. Fourth is law of karma. And fifth is law of Dharma. And law of Dharma encompasses all 5. So what the Buddha said is that all reality works according to laws. Cause and effect. Like gravity. When you fold this, when I let it fall, it falls. It's the law of nature. And in the same way, all spiritual path works according to laws of nature. And what does it tell us, implicitly, is that your spiritual path is dependent on laws of nature and not on will of some spiritual being. So it does mean, even if you believe in God, then the God is not really a person. It's just laws of nature. And in this way, whatever success you have on the path from the perspective of Dharma is never an act of some will of God, but it's always karmically caused. It's just you may have a feeling that, for example, God is coming to you and you have ultimate bliss of divine bliss and stuff like that. But from the perspective of Dharma, the fact you have this bliss is because you put some causes in this lifetime or in previous lifetimes. So even if you interpret it in theistic words, that you have some bliss because God loves you, God saves you and stuff like that, actually in reality it's because of cause and effect. So even if you have a theistic approach, which is perfectly fine, I completely think it's okay. But then you must realize that if you believe in God, that the God gives you grace only because of your conduct. So you cannot have grace of God without good conduct. And if you have grace of God, so to speak, because even if you don't have good conduct, then it's because past lives you had good conduct. It's impossible that the spiritual bliss comes to you without specific causes. So this is very important to realize that this is actually laws of nature. But laws of nature are not just materialistic. Spiritual reality, which is completely mind-blowing, transcendental, different dimensions of reality, different beings, spiritual beings. Dharma encompasses all that. But it just says that the spiritual reality is not random. It works according to causal laws just as physical matter. So, for example, the way you are reborn in future lives, it's never like random. It's always based on certain karma. And so in general, I love how Ajahn Sona speaks about it, because he says the mother nature kisses you when you develop this divine emotion of loving kindness to a very powerful level. It feels like mother nature kisses you on the forehead and everything is forgiven forever and ever and you are blissed out, everything is great. But this is the kiss of mother nature. So this is natural process. And he said, no matter how much you ask, plead for that, you cannot ask for it. In order to be kissed by mother nature, you must behave well. You have to follow the laws of Dharma. And there are two laws of Dharma that are most important. The first is law of karma, and the second is law of Dharma. And I will just speak a few words about law of Dharma just for the clarity of the spectrum, but in general we will focus on the law of karma. And the law of Dharma is such that it's in general connected with the so-called Four Noble Truths, which is that the ultimate liberation comes from letting go of all craving. Craving for sensuality, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. So ultimately, what it speaks, the law of Dharma, is that actually seeking happiness in the world only prolongs your suffering. Because letting go of everything is the ultimate. So let's say the highest thing in the universe, which is Nibbana, or in yoga, Kaivalya, ultimate liberation, is just letting go of everything. To stop fearing ending of existence and to stop fearing end of existence, to stop wanting anything from existence, and then you reach perfection. Because perfection is always there. It's asankhata, it's unconditioned. This word sankhara means conditioned, asankhata, unconditioned. Just like in theistic religions, they say God is unconditioned. God just is. It's the same with Nibbana. Nibbana just is. And it's the same with Kaivalya and yoga. It just is. And in order to get to that which just is, you must let go of everything that is impermanent, that is created by the mind, by the heart. And so this is the law of Dharma, but we will not focus on that. Let's focus, because this is like the ultimate truth, but there is so-called, I call it Brahmanical truth, which is the truth, which is heavenly truth, which is super important if you want to get to this ultimate truth. And actually trying to get to this ultimate truth too fast can be very difficult, and it actually can backfire. So in order to get to ultimate truth, which is very comforting, first you must go to this truth about love, compassion, goodness, which is this Brahmic truth. And what is Brahmic? Brahma means highest or divine or godlike, because Brahmas are the super powerful, super high gods in samsara. Because in general, in yoga and Buddhism, we have the structure of reality where there are 6 spheres of existence. And it's important to understand that. Even if you don't believe that, I think as a yoga teachers, you should have at least being open-minded that maybe it's true. To don't dismiss it completely, because you may, if you denied it completely, then it's like you try to extract something out of the tradition, and I would call it a little bit arrogant, because then you just don't have yet the spiritual qualities to know this for yourself. But when you read these texts, all these ancient masters were speaking about this realm of existence, that they exist, that this is the truth, that the rebirth, reincarnation is the truth, And actually the Dharma doesn't make much sense without this. Because without this, seriously, karma doesn't make much sense. Because the karma is actually the teaching about certain actions that bring fruit in the future. And in most important, karma is about future lives. And these teachings are that the game is much more profound than we think. The things we experience on earth are like minute compared to the power of the experience that can go after death. So actually it's very worthwhile to develop good karma, because after death the fruit can be great, both the bad and the good. So this is important to know the gravity of the situation. And even if you don't believe that, if you are like secular, atheist, completely reductionist, at least you can have this thought that maybe it's true and maybe I just don't know yet. Maybe I just don't have this power of spiritual insight to know this. I don't say it's the truth, but maybe it's the truth. If you have this maybe it's the truth, then it's enough, I think. And the thing is that, yeah, there are these realms of existence, and the highest is the Brahma realm. And the Brahma realms is like, it's what all these mystical people have experienced. From various traditions, Christian tradition, yoga tradition, Buddhist tradition, when people they speak that they saw light, like they felt super bliss, like everything dissolved in different reality where there was just happiness, bliss, and peace. So this is these Brahma realms, the realms of divine splendor and what is important is that this dimension is actually in your heart. So let's say that when you travel in this world, you travel with your body. You can go to the other room, you can go to the other city, you travel with your body. But we can also travel with our hearts. And actually, when you get deep into meditation and into yoga, you can at some point travel to different dimensions of reality. And it's like I can be sitting there, but you could be completely not aware of this reality, but of different dimension of reality. And this actually happens in samadhi. What is in yoga called samadhi is being in these Brahmic realms of existence. And that's why it's called Brahmanical truth, because we have so-called Brahma Viharas. And Brahma means divine, and Vihara means emotion or dwelling. And it's very interesting composition, because actually, when you are in emotion, you dwell in something. It's like your flat. When you live somewhere, certain flats, certain houses have certain vibration. And when you live in certain emotions, you live in certain way. So in general, what we are encouraged to is to move into divine states of heart, to live there, like it's your home. You go back to your home, not to only your house, but you go back to your home to loving kindness, to compassion, to sympathetic joy, to equanimity, these divine emotions, Brahma Viharas. And this is important because karma can work in many ways. But in general, there are 4 kinds of karma. One is karma that leads to bliss in samsara, which is good karma. So for example, let's say you share food with someone, or you are a very generous person, you help others and stuff like that. This is good karma. And what it leads to? It leads to happiness in this life, and it leads to happiness in future lives. And there is bad karma, which is karma that deals with unwholesome action, that deals with hurting others. When you hurt others, then you made bad karma. And there is mixed karma, which is most of human deeds are mixed karma, because we do things without purely malicious intention or without purely good intention. Usually it's something in the between. And the fruit of that is mixed experience. And there is 4th kind of karma, which is neither good nor bad, which is karma that transcends karma, which is pure dharma, which leads to nirvana. So the ultimate karma is letting go of everything. But in general, there is such principle that developing good karma helps enormously to develop this neither good nor bad karma that leads to liberation. Because without strong foundation in good karma, the spiritual path is extremely hard. So that's why I was talking even on this previous lecture that when you want to develop sometimes good meditation, actually karma yoga is the best thing to do because you are doing good karma. And so this is like one way of approaching this, but what is important about the karma? First of all, karma has many dimensions, but let me start from that. There's karma and there's vipaka. So karma is like action and vipaka is the fruit. Actually, people speak about karma when they think they're speaking about the fruit. You know, the karma will come back to him. But actually it's vipaka, it's the fruit that goes back. But karma is the moment you do it. And there are three ways of doing karma: mental karma, verbal karma, and bodily karma. Because they are so-called three gates of action. So you act with your mind, you act with your mouth, speaking, and you act with your body. And these three ways of acting creates karma. So, and karma has like very important three aspects. One is in the present moment you feel the fruit immediately. So for example, if you speak with anger, you feel unpleasant the moment you speak. Secondly, karma works in the future. So not only you experience the fruit right now in the feeling of this deed, but you also will experience this in the future. So whenever you act with bad intention, it's unavoidable that something will happen that you will experience pain. And the same with goodness. Whatever you do with good intention, there is just no way that at some point you won't experience pleasure. And the third thing, which is super important, is that the karma changes your character. Every time you do a good or bad deed, it changes your habits. And the habits changes who you are. So when you change slowly these little things, it changes who you are. So actually when you do a lot of good karma, then eventually you become a good person because it becomes your habit, it becomes who you are. And when you constantly do bad things, then this becomes your habit and this becomes who you are. So this is like self-reinforcing process. When you do bad karma, not only you suffer in the present, not only you suffer in the future, but only you create more conditions that you will repeat this self-defeating cycle. And when you do good karma, you get good results in the present, you get good results in the future, and you reinforce this self-victorious mechanism that leads you to greater and greater happiness. Yeah, I'll get to this. So no worries, no worries. And but what is super important is one more thing, that this can lead both in this life and in future lives. And actually, I noticed this very strongly because people, both are very powerful. When you do good karma, most people will experience fruit both in this life and in the next life. So your life will get much more happy in this life and free. And also in the future, the fruit is unimaginably great. And the same goes with bad karma. Even there is words in Dhammapada that the fool who do evil evil doesn't come always in the moment when he does it. But the fool doesn't know that drop by drop the jar is filled. And when it's filled, it's game over. And the same with goodness. Not always the good experience bliss right now. But drop by drop the jar is filled. And when it's filled, the bliss is unavoidable. So it's very important to realize this working in time. You need patience with karma, and it goes both ways. And yeah, intention is crucial. And you will know this by quality of the heart. In general, intention that comes from greed and hurt, hatred, is in general wrong. And the one which comes from moderation or contentment, goodwill, generosity, love, compassion is good. And of course it's tricky to know exactly what's what, but there are many guidelines. I've tried to speak about them. But this is important. And let me go back a little bit on Earth right now. both on Earth and into cosmos. But on Earth, what is true happiness? And I think most people want freedom, love, bliss, joy, stuff like that. And what brings that? Let's work on this love example because it's very nice to speak about this. And people, because it's possible in this life, but few people get it. Why? Because people call love what is not love. For example, people usually, when they are infatuated, they get greedy and they want more. And the greed is bad karma. When you are acting out of greed, which is you take something which is not given, you demand something, it's opposite of love. The love is content with what is and wants to share. And those who actually follow the path of love, both in their work, in their relationships, in their family, they bring harmony everywhere. And I can assure you that it's so powerful that there is absolutely no situation you cannot win with love and compassion. When you just act with love and compassion, you can be in deepest hell in this life and you will get out and you will be super happy at some point. Just the deeper in hell you are, the longer it gets. But it's just unavoidable. Just act with compassion, with loving kindness, with generosity, and you will be fine. For example, people want sympathy from others. But what really brings sympathy? It brings by forgiveness, by being kind, by being good for others, being generous. When you give things to people that they find of value, then they like this. For example, let's say on this talk, on this meeting, if I would give you something that would be annoying you, then you would feel that you don't like me. But if I give you something that you find valuable, that you feel you like me. If I wanted something from you, demand, you would not like me. But if I don't want anything from you, but only give you something of value, then you like me, right? So notice that if you give more than you take, then actually you will be the most happy person in the world because everyone will like you. And when everyone likes you, they want to support you. And then you don't have to demand things because people give out of free will. And this is how spiritual people work. Because many spiritual people work based on donations, just out of goodness, not expecting anything. They are ready to starve a little or something, but this always comes, they are always fed, they are always doing right. They just trust the process. They just trust when they will be good, it will come back. And this is how you let go of this fear and you develop this goodness. And when you are unreasonably kind, Ajahn Sona speaks, you should be unreasonably good. Because people likes to think about, you know, I should be that, yeah, this person did this to me, he doesn't deserve to be generous towards him. He doesn't deserve forgiveness. He doesn't deserve to be good toward. But this is the path of judgment. And if you go the path of judgment, you will never be free. Because the hurt in the world is infinite. There are infinite beings who hurt other beings. So if you will judge, every human has hurt someone, every human makes mistakes. So if you go with this path, you will never be free. But if you are like, whatever people do to me, I will be good to them. You just don't have to think anymore. You just do it out of habit. And actually Ajahn Sona speaks that, step into the beautiful, let go of defilements as soon as possible. So when someone, for example, insults you, then instead of holding to this anger, I will throw him with my burning coal. When you hold that and you want to throw that, you are burning yourself. But you can throw it off. He insulted you for 1 second, 2 seconds, but you can carry it for weeks. But you can carry it for only these 2 seconds, and I just let go. And you train yourself in this process of not holding to evil, not holding to hurt. You just generate compassion. Okay, and this is actually how Buddha told us to develop this. This is connected to Sankharas. Perception. Yonisamanasikara is wise perception. For example, someone insults you, you have 2 things you can do. You can focus on this insult and its so-called irritation aspect, anger aspect, or you can focus on conditioning aspect. He insulted me because he's conditioned to do it. It has nothing to do with me. He's just doing this because, for example, I don't know, but maybe his father or his mother was insulting him all the time, so he just repeats the pattern. Or someone hurt him, so he hurts others. And you see, it's just conditioned being, and he's not happy. You know that it's not pleasant to be hurting others. You know this person is suffering, and you direct attention, this person is suffering, I feel compassion, may this being be free of suffering, may this being be happy. And how would you like to present that? Well, with forgiveness, with compassion, and in just being calm. And this way you transform yourself. And this way, when you are doing this and people notice it, you will be perceived as super noble person. And then people will love you. And guess, how will you find true love in life? How will you attract someone who is super nice to you? Well, they must see your nobility, right? So if you follow this path of goodness to everyone, actually you have the greatest chance of experiencing true love. And what is true love if not bliss, right? And then you get a taste, because like true love in relationship is like a foretaste of heaven. Because the Buddha said, imagine a person who has absolutely everything, who has super health, everyone loves him, who can have everything in the world, is the happiest person alive for the entirety of life. And then Buddha took one piece of dirt and said, what is greater, this piece of dirt under my finger or these great Himalayas? And they said, you cannot compare. It's unimaginably greater, the Himalayas, than this little dirt. And he said, the bliss that you experience in heaven is incomparable to this. This greatest bliss on earth is like this little dirt. And the happiness of heaven is incomparable. You just cannot compare. It's like great Himalayas. And actually, the bliss itself and the power of it is unimaginable, and the longevity of that. Because, for example, the Brahma realms, when you are reborn there, it lasts eons. So millions of years of super bliss. And who gets there? People who make good karma. So this is when you realize that, and it works both ways with lower realms as well. Because the suffering in lower realms was exactly the same metaphor. The Buddha said the little dirt, the great Himalayas. And he said the suffering you experience on earth is nothing compared to the lower realms. So people who are truly evil, they go to very bad destinations karmically, and the suffering is great. And this is important because you realize that the human realm, from the yoga and Buddhist perspective, is actually like a test. It's more like humans are the beings which choose their destiny. Because heavenly beings are so set in bliss that it's hard to fall down, and the lower beings are so set in bad qualities that it's hard to get out. But humans have total choice. And you can notice that actually every realm of existence has called you in this life. And I can give you examples. Hell realm on earth is like very bad people. People who have very bad qualities, very harmful and stuff like that. And I'm sure there were people, for example, like even happens now in the war, like go to war, let's fight. You know, and when the war happens, there is a war, then war zone is like hell realm on earth. There are, you know, people shooting each other, blood, great pain, great fear and stuff like that. It's not hell on earth. And yeah, there are people who wants to create hell on earth, like let's make a war. So like on earth we have this little hell. We have hungry ghosts, pretas, which are like people who are super greedy. Like because they are these ghosts that wander in astral realms, and they just always hungry, and they can never feed. They just feel anger, but whatever they eat turns into dust. It's just like a metaphor. And for example, we have like some crack addicts, or you know, some super addicts that they just want more and more of that, and they're super obsessed and they're never satisfied. So this is like go, and how many people you've met? Yeah, take drugs with me, you know, it will be cool. It's like the ghost realm is calling you. Animal realm, which is also realm of suffering. You know, I'm not speaking about dogs which you love, but in general, life in nature is pretty cruel if you really look deeply into that. Because something can eat you very brutally, or you are cold in the winter and stuff like that. But in general, animal realm is like realm without higher values, that you eat only to eat, you live only to eat, to just be selfish, to care for yourself, and you don't care about anything else. And then human realm is like, of course, the realm of choice. So it's like in between. Then there is Deva realm, which is like angel realm, like lower gods. And devas are beings that are super good. They are very generous, very moral, not hurting others, very noble people. But the devas still have craving, which means they still like enjoy the world, which is they are very good, but they want something from the world in return, in a way. They want have fun, they want to have, relationships and stuff like that. And then there is Brahma realm, which are those that are pure love, pure goodness, pure generosity, without wanting anything. And these are like monks, nuns, ascetics, yogis. The people who let go, they don't want anything, they just want to be good and just practice. So this is like the Brahma realm. And you notice, like Deva realm, for example, I think even such event, or people who are, some very good hippies and stuff like that, they call you, yeah, just join our nice community, or follow this path. And this is like Deva realm calling you. Or like monks who tell you, come forth, ordain as a monk. The Brahma realm is calling you, right? So you can see that all these realms are calling you. People who are live in animal realm, they want, yeah, just live like me. People who are like addicts, hungry ghosts, yeah, go live like me. People who make wars, yeah, join the war, right? People who are like devas come, people who are like brahmas come. So you can see that actually all these realms are reflected on earth, and all are calling you. But you choose which you follow. And this choice is super important because it will create your destiny in this life, and it will create your destiny in future life. Because in certain environments, it's much easier to cultivate certain states. Completely different states you cultivate in a monastery than in an army, or in a yogic school than in some, drinking some alcoholics, right? So you can see that there are different ways, and Buddha said, do not associate with fools, associate with the wise. This is the greatest blessing. He said that it's super important that you associate with good people, so you, by just learning like monkeys, by, doing the same thing, you just... I'm sorry if this joke, I hope it didn't offend you, but this is actually in Buddhist, because in Buddhism we actually talk a lot about conditioning, that we are like monkeys. I am like a monkey too. I just listen to Ajahn Brahm, to Ajahn Sona, and I just like a monkey repeat. Also, most things I say, I speak like a monkey. I just speak what I read and what I heard. It's not like my super inventions. It's just that these teachings are out there, and I'm just saying what I think is the wisest of them, but it's not like I invented any of this stuff. I'm just repeating. And actually it's good to realize that we have very strong human nature to repeat the behaviors of those around us. So if you want to make a good karma, it's very good to be around people who are good. And then you just soak in this. So this is important. But we are coming to the next thing, Sankharas. Because Sankharas, I won't get into super detail, I'll simplify it. But Sankharas is, in general, the aspect of reality that deals with will, with choice, and with intention. So Sankhara is like act of will, which always has some intention quality, and it's always connected with choice. And actually, every moment has element of Sankhara in it. So even now you have a choice to listen to me or to ignore me. You have a choice to interpret my words with benefit of doubt and with goodwill, that even if I say something stupid, you are okay, he's just, maybe he's joking, or maybe I don't understand something. Or you may take my words with, oh, he's an idiot, and he's just, he lost his mind and he's just speaking some crazy stuff, And you're making a choice. And when you interact with your parents and they say something nasty to you, you make a choice how you react to it. You take it to yourself or you let it go. You forgive them or you react and you start to super argument, right? And you make a choice with your partner. If, for example, I don't know, your partner asks you for something, you try to resonate or you just ignore, or when, in many things, you can act with greed or with contentment, with hatred or with forgiveness. And you make this choice. sometimes we are so conditioned that we feel like we are not making this choice. But it's because we made so many choices, it is like this building of character, that it's hard to break the pattern. For example, people who is an alcoholic, it's very hard to say no to drink. But it's because he said so many times yes in the past when he had a choice. And the deeper you are in these Sankharas, they are like adding up. The more you are in these cycles. And this works both ways. It's very bad for bad karma, because when you have very strong bad habits, it's very hard to get out of them. But luckily, it's also same for the good. When you have very strong good habits, it's very hard to lose them. And this is what path of yoga is about, to develop such strong good habits that they become part of you. They just become you. You just become these good habits, and then you are, what? You are just flowing with this dharma, because actually you live according with the law of nature, with the law of karma. You do what is healthy, what is good, and this is beautiful, because then you don't really have to do much at all, because you have a habit of being good, and this law is so beautiful when it's on the light side of the force, so to speak, because whatever you do out of good intention, the happiness will just come from various sides. You don't even know when it comes from what side. And there are like, in general, there are three levels, like one more understanding of Dharma. First level is to understand this law, which is you must understand what leads to happiness, what brings to suffering. And as I said in the previous lecture, one thing is to try to find in your own experience, reflect deeply on your experience, on your body, on your feelings, on your actions, on the consequences, how it affects others, empathize, reflect. But also you can have guidelines from yogic teachings, from Buddha teachings, and just in this context. And once you know, then you live in accordance to this law that you take on faith, on you find in yourself. And when you live with the law of karma, with the law of dharma, then you wait for the reward naturally. You don't force the reward because it will come naturally. For example, you may be practicing for years, and at some point you might have super blissful meditation, or you might meet the greatest person in your life, or you might find some super nice job opportunity, or you might find some super spiritual possibility. And it will come to you not by chance. It's always karma. And this is where we get really magical. Because normally, and we live in a very scientific world, that we believe that world acts accordingly to laws of matter. That, for example, that you meet certain person because certain particles and all these phenomena, because we are in the same room and stuff like that. But actually, when you get deep into Dhamma, you will discover that the reason why you met this person has spiritual reason. Because in Dhammapada, Buddha said, it is the heart that creates everything. And from the good intention, happiness follows like shadow that never leaves. And from bad intentions, suffering never leaves like the wheel that follows the hoof of the ox. So, if you just do the good stuff, then by like magical chance, these beautiful things will come to you. And if you notice this in this life, and if you get some deeper meditation and you notice that the death does not end life, it is just further rebirth and stuff like that, then you will know this is exactly the same principle that works after death. But you must have degree of faith or wisdom. Either faith, you must have faith in Dharma, that in Karma, that you will follow this, or you have to develop certain point of wisdom that you will see it for yourself. Because it takes years to really observe that. Because it takes patience. You need to observe that long term. But you will notice both in yourself and in others that those people who follow this principle of goodness are the only ones who are actually happy and free to some degree. And most people are just living in illusion. They try to make impression that they are happy. On Facebook, they post only smiling pictures, that they had great holidays and stuff like that. But they don't post about all this painful stuff that they experienced there. All the arguments they had with their partner, all the too hot weather or mosquitoes biting them or whatever, problems on the journey. No, they take this one snapshot and they want to create illusion, I'm happy. But actually, from my experience, very few people are happy. Because I also do like consultations on meditation retreats. And all people, even those who have you super happy, when they come to a consultation, suddenly they open up with all their suffering. And this is everywhere. And people are suffering in work, they suffer in relationships, they suffer in family relationships, they suffer with themselves. And this is actually good to realize that, because you realize that you are imperfect, that you are a suffering being. And what comes from that? Compassion, self-compassion and compassion from others. And when you have this compassion, yes, I am suffering, others are suffering, I just wish myself to be happy and I wish to others to be happy. And then magic happens, because you are synchronizing like your vibration, your sound of your life with this vibration, with this sound of love, of loving kindness. And then, when it becomes powerful, it can transform and transcend your reality. And what is important is that what is important, you must feel this extremely strongly. That you must feel such great compassion to yourself and others that you will get ahimsa, which is non-harm, which is one of principles of yoga, ahimsa, non-harm. That you must have such strong intention of compassion that you will say to yourself, I want to never, ever hurt any being or myself. And if you learn that, then you are actually reaching spiritual maturity and eventually enlightenment. Because this is what it's all about. This is this mud for the lotus. This mud is suffering, and this is only to teach you super compassion and super love. Unreasonable compassion, unreasonable love, without judgment. You just see everything is suffering, and you just feel super compassion to everyone. And when you have that and you make that your guiding principle, like highest value in your life, then everything you do will be good. Your thoughts will be motivated by compassion and love. Your words will be motivated by compassion and love, just as it's right now for me, because my only intention here is to give you this seed that maybe you will follow this and you will have a better life, you will make better karma, better life for yourself and for others, and with your body, whatever you do. And then you will reflect back on your life. How can you live your life, your relationships with your family, with your partners, with your co-workers? What work can you find to make everything aligned to this intention of compassion, loving kindness, generosity, and non-harm? And when you do that, first of all, you will be very happy on your daily basis and free, because you will dwell, you will live in this presence of these divine emotions. They will fill your life. For now, it might think, it's only talking like this. But if you follow this path, it will become your reality. After a few years of good practice, you will not be able to recognize yourself from a few years back, because you will be so transformed that actually it will be a different person. Because the Buddhist teachings, actually, there is no you. There are only Sankharas. There are only mental formations that stack up. And I like the metaphor of the bonfire. When you have bonfire, it burns. And you add wood, it burns stronger, it burns longer. If you stop giving wood, it starts to burn less. And this symbolizes all processes in our hearts. If you want something to be, for example, if you want to love someone, you have to give your intention to this love. If you stop doing that, this love will fade away. If you hate someone, if you keep thinking about this person, I hate him, then you create this bonfire. If you stop thinking that, only live that, you notice that if you stop thinking about someone, few months, few years pass, and you no longer feel this hate, because it naturally diminishes. And you can use this metaphor for everything, for both dissolving the bad and to cultivate the good. Just put wood into the good stuff and stop putting wood into the bad stuff. And this is what Ajahn Sona is speaking. Just step into the beautiful as soon as possible. You don't have to, talk with your defilements. Oh, does this person deserve it? Do I deserve it? Should I do this? Should I not do this? No, just unreasonably, always, as soon as possible, leave the defilements, leave greed, leave hatred, leave harm, and develop compassion, contentment, moderation, loving kindness, gratitude. And this is right effort in Buddhism. This is the most important practice. You dissolve the bad qualities, you cultivate the good qualities. It's that simple. And when you do that, not only you will create such harmonious atmosphere in your life that probably you will do what your only work will be what you love, because you will be so good that people will want it, they will want to support you. Probably you will attract best friends and best partners in your life, or maybe you will even pursue spiritual path. And most importantly, in this life or after this life, but probably in this life, when you follow this path, one day you will sit in meditation and you will dissolve in bliss. And this is this hidden realm of spirit that actually works according to karma. As I said, this is law of nature. This not happen by chance. The reason why some people become mystics and they have all these blissful super experiences is because they were good people. They went on some path of spirituality. They let go of all these bad qualities. They cultivated good qualities in monasteries, in ashrams, in their lives, in normal lives. And then suddenly this bliss comes. And what is the beautiful in Dharma? You don't need any external being. You don't need any chance. You don't need any grace. It just happens naturally through your good conduct. Mother Nature kisses you on the forehead if you behave well. And you might think this is I'm crazy or something. But just if you will practice, it will shock you, but you will realize it's the truth eventually. And if it doesn't come, it's two reasons. Either you don't practice good enough or long enough, or you have some very bad karma from the past life. Because why not practicing good enough? Because you might be not unreasonable in your compassion and your love. You start to negotiate. This person doesn't deserve. I shouldn't be this good. I should care more for myself. Or I should be more harsh with myself. No. Always forgiving yourself, forgiving others. Always developing goodwill to yourself, to your others. And dwell in this compassion and love until you feel it to everyone utterly. Second thing, you don't practice long enough. If you was making bad habits, bad karma through your whole life, don't expect that in 1 week you will change all your your mind. It takes years to undo the things. But this is beautiful about Dharma, that actually, when you follow the path of Dharma, the changes are much quicker than you expect. Actually, the Buddha said, if everyone put everything to their practice, that everyone can get full enlightenment in a few years. If you would give 100%. Because this is what relates to what I said. 1 step towards God is 1,000 steps of Him towards you. So 1 step towards Dharma is 1,000 steps of Dharma towards you. So actually, just doing this little by little, in few years, it will change dramatically. But you must change mindset. It's not like a drug. It's not I take a drug, I have a high, and then the high gets off. It's a progressive path of building up. It's like a healthy food that health comes through years of healthy eating. Just follow this path of healthy conduct and you will be mind blown how much things change. And the third part is karma. It goes both ways, both bad karma and good karma. If you have very bad karma, then even if you practice many years, then after these many years of good practice, you just dissolve the layers of bad karma. And by the way, there is a sutta that the Buddha says that if you practice goodness, then the bad karma gets dissolved. So for example, if you had karma from the past that you would experience some super suffering in this life, if you practice goodness and generosity and forgiveness and stuff like that, then you might dissolve this karma and it will not come to you. And then next few years and the bliss will come. But there is other hand. Some people have such good karma that they go to first meditation course and they bliss out. Why? Because they had so much good karma from the past lives that they have natural inclinations to these states. And then you realize the Buddha said there is only one thing we own, and this is our karma. You don't own your body. You didn't create this body. You don't create the food that creates this body. And when this body dies, it's back to nature. You don't own this mind. This mind creates thoughts on its own, right? You can stop thinking. You cannot stop thinking. The mind lives on its own. It's not really your mind. All the possessions, you will have to let them go when you die. But the Buddha said there is one thing you cannot let go of, and this is your karma. Whatever you do in your life, you will experience in the future. whatever you do right now, the fruit will come in the future. And I just want to encourage you to try to start noticing, even in this life. Just make a determination that you will observe how things are going in your life when you have more these negative states and you act out on them, and how things are going when you act out on the good intentions. And I assure you that almost every relationship and every situation can be transformed, and it will grow to such a place in such a way that something will be beautiful. And one last thing, Ajahn Sona says that the practice, it's not a duty, it's a beauty. Practice is like, it shouldn't be dutiful. When you treat it as a duty, then you've already lost the path. Because it's not a duty to meditate, it's not a duty to be good. It's a beauty. It's super nice to meditate. It's a blissful abiding. It's super nice to be kind. It's super nice to forgive. It's super nice to be generous. And when you notice that, it's a beauty, and this beauty will just become your reality. You move into this dwelling of bliss, of heaven. And maybe just a few words on the end about the general principles that are most important to karma is, in general, your emotional states, your intention, but also non-harm and generosity. So in general, what you should keep in mind is, do I act, speak, or think out of good intentions or bad intentions? Does it feel like lovely or hateful? And what is important, that Buddhism and yoga is super ambitious, because most people just want to work on the words and deeds because this is what others see, but they don't care what they think. They may act kindly but think nasty thoughts. But the Buddha asks you, no, transform your thoughts as well, transform your emotions. You should be in a state that just work with that. It's possible to change these habits of feeling, of thinking. And you will think more positively, more calm, more kind and lovely and compassionate, and feel. And this is super important, and from this comes that do not harm. One thing is to cultivate your heart so you won't harm. But the second thing is to make rules. And the Buddha said there are 5 rules that are super important. If you keep them, you won't make the worst karma. Or you won't make bad karma at all. And very shortly, first is to not kill and not harm living beings. Don't harm any beings, even insects. Just feel this insect wants to live just as you, he wants to be happy. May he be happy. Second thing, don't take what is not given. Never steal, and never take psychologically what people don't offer you. People reject you in a way, okay, I'm content. I don't need, I will find elsewhere or in myself. Never take what is not given. This is super important, because then you don't fall into greed, you don't go into argument, but you are always pure. Okay, I don't need this, I respect your wish, I go somewhere else. Third thing, don't hurt sexually, which is don't commit adultery, which is like in a committed relationship, then it would hurt someone to be, I don't know how this word in English, but when you sleep with someone else without permission, let's say. And also, when you commit adultery with someone, when you are not in relationship, but this person is, then you make a turmoil in their relationship. So you hurt this relationship. So you don't do this. The Buddha on the lay level doesn't tell that sexuality is wrong, but you don't hurt sexually. And never cross boundaries of your partner, which means you never do sexually what your partner doesn't want. And if you follow these principles, you won't harm sexually. And we know that sexuality can harm, so we don't want to harm. And fourth, don't hurt with speech, which is don't lie, don't say harmful things, don't divide people, which is you don't do the practice of trying to put people against each other, and try not to speak idle chatter, which is pointless speech, tiring, egoistic, like only speaking about me, I did this, I did that. Try to speak things that actually are helpful. And if you do this, your speech will be very conducive to good being, and it will energize others. You can notice that when people, this is called in Pali, san papalapa, which is blah, 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 then you feel tired after that. But when you have some great conversation or you hear great talk, then you feel inspired, you feel energized. So try to make your speech just truthful, nice, beneficial, rather harmonizing than dividing, and useful. And the 5 is just not take substances that could lead to carelessness and that you would break the other 4, which includes mostly alcohol. Because under alcohol you have more chance of lying, of committing sexual misconduct, of taking what is not yours or harming someone. So avoid these substances that cloud your mind to the degree that you can hurt someone. And the other counterpart is generosity, which means material generosity and psychological generosity, which is try to bring additional values to others' lives. For example, share your food. The Buddha said, if people knew what is the fruit of giving food, they would never eat without sharing. Because the karma of sharing food is such strong that it's crazy. And what is crazy is that the food is never ours. It's not you created this food. It's Mother Nature created these apples, this food. But you take it and it's mine, mine. Even though you never created this. And you never created anything in this world. Actually, you only transmute it. But the world is feeding us. And we take it as ours and we don't want to share. But from the Dharma perspective, it's actually created to be shared. The reality exists so you can learn to love and be compassionate, because this is the ultimate reality, the reality of Brahmic truth, of love. So take the opportunity that nature feeds you so you can share with others. And also, like material support if someone needs, or donate for some great causes or people who do good things and stuff like that. And psychological generosity, which means you're generous with your time. You can listen to someone, you can help, you can do some good deed. Be generous with your time. Don't live only for yourself, also for yourself, because it's important in Buddhism that it's not just about others. Be good to yourself as well, but be good to others. Take opportunities. Ajahn Brahmali says, never lose an opportunity to do something kind. And if you become like that, you will think, I will be less rich if I am too generous. But actually, people will reward you, life will reward you, and you will just live in a different realm, like completely better life. So this is in general, these sankharas, these choices that we make, just make good choices, observe the cause and effect, so this becomes your own inner knowledge, and just open up to results. And it's beautiful, you cannot expect the result, because the greatest result, which will be the spiritual bliss, is so bizarre and powerful and beautiful that you cannot even imagine it. So that's why it's good to not really expect what the fruit will be, because whatever you expect, it will blow your mind. For example, even in relationships, you might have some idea of great person, but actually the one you meet might be better than whatever you ever imagined. Because the life can create more beautiful things than you can imagine at this point. And if you make good karma, then it will all come with time. Just be patient, observe, practice. And this is actually the essence of yoga, because this transforms your life and it transforms the life around you. And all the meditation and asanas practice is just to support that. So your body is relaxed, so your mind is in good shape, so you can actually be this good present in the world. And if you do that, you will be a really great yoga teacher, and you will just change the world for the better and yourself. So this is my talk for you, and I hope you enjoyed it, and it will be beneficial for you, and thank you for listening. Yeah. Thank you.